Well, my name is Mielle, and this is Intro to Insight, a space where I'm going to reveal lessons that lead to fulfillment and opportunity. These are all my personal stories and all the things that made me who I am. There's a lot that goes into me being in this space right now, and there's a lot that goes into why I decided to become this person that steps into this space. So I really want to talk about, in this episode, the beginning of a fulfilling presence. And this dives into why I decided to start a podcast, why I decided to show up in this space, why I decided to share my story in the first place. Ooh, it rhymes. I wanted to do more with my platform on social media, and in 2017 I realized the type of work that I wanted to put out and the type of connection that I wanted to make. This was a space for me to add depth to my digital presence. I wanted to get more into posting self-portraits to gain my confidence, and then I'll talk more about my creative journey with that as well later on. In that specific moment, I was like, okay, I want to share more about my story because I feel like this is the way that I can be vulnerable, because around that time I was opening up more, and I wanted to I need to stop saying I need to just be exact and confident in my words. But I was forming my platform to be the space where I was comfortable with being vulnerable with myself, because I grew up not really sharing a lot of the things that I struggle with or the things that, were challenges for me. And it was around in college where I wanted to explore that more. I wanted to explore that side of me more. And I knew that for me to have that space, I could create it myself. Yeah, I wanted to create this vulnerable space for my social media, not only for myself to be comfortable with sharing my story and connecting with others, but also to give people the inspiration that they might need to also speak their truth, or to also just dive into their own self-awareness and, self-healing journey. My storytelling journey as an artist, but also my storytelling journey as, just a vulnerable person started with Instagram captions. It didn't start with a journal. It didn't start with therapy sessions. It started in the Instagram captions. I was like, I want to be real with the people, and I want to be real with myself, and I want to be an artist as well, and I want to be a storyteller. So I practice on Instagram. I wish I could remember what exactly I talked about for that very first long caption that I put out, because I really had to step into this energy of being this very confident person and being very open. And I had previously not done that before, not shared as much on social media. So I really wish that I knew exactly what that first topic was. I don't. But all I know is that it really helped me be the person that I am today, and it helped me open up in the ways that I do today. I got to a point where I noticed that there were other ways that I could share my story. Instagram captions was not the end-all, be-all, only way to get my story out. I would say about a year later, I got very comfortable with social media, and I got very comfortable with sharing my story, and I wanted another way. I wanted another platform. I wanted to give myself all of these different ways to just explore who I am and let people see who I am as well. And I want to dive into the chaos that I endured of having choices. I was thinking about writing a blog. I was thinking about podcasts. I was thinking about being a YouTuber. I was thinking about being a motivational speaker and stuff like that. And with all of those options, it led to a lot of inner chaos because I wasn't sure which way to go. And I tried to do all of these things at once, and it kind of just ran me into the ground. And there was also a sense of pressure that I put on myself to do it all, because I don't know, for some reason, I just believe that if you want to be a storyteller, you have to do it in all the ways, I don't know where the expectation came from. But I was also just relatively new to, sharing my story and just being very excited about, speaking my truth and sharing my story and finding my voice. But I will say though, that even though it felt very chaotic for me to have those many options, the moment you find your voice, so many doors open for you. And I think that's a blessing, truly. And I think it's a great way to look at things. I tried to do all of these different things, and it led to that inner chaos. I couldn't figure out the time management of it. And so I got to a point in my life where I pretty much just dropped a lot of the things that I was passionate about. I stopped the blog writing to focus on the podcast, and then I stopped the podcast to focus on my grades in college, and then I picked back up the podcast, and then I dropped the podcast again because I feel like I didn't know myself enough. There was something missing in the time that I have previously started these podcasts. I let go of having a YouTube channel. I let go of the thought of like hosting a podcast. You know, I let go of blog writing, and I turned my focus inward instead of like trying to figure out how I want to get my story out in other ways. I turned myself inward and figured out what exactly was going on internally, you know, mentally, emotionally, that felt like I was being blocked from following or from even choosing, you know, a purpose, a passion. And I know that like I also felt very insecure about having these different focuses, you know, at different times, because I believe that it gave people, and I don't think anybody ever thought this, but you know, you always assume people are thinking certain things about you. And for me, that was all about like, oh, people are going to see me as not like being committed, because I'll pick up a YouTube channel and then, you know, a year or two later I'll drop it. Then I'll pick up a podcast, you know, and in a couple months I'll drop it. And I always focus on like how people viewed that. And that stopped me for a long time of developing a plan or developing a better focus. So with me going back and forth with these different ways to share my story, I thought people viewed me as not being somebody who can commit to anything, because that's how I viewed myself. I was beating myself up in the background like, girl, you can't hold on to this. You can't hold on to this goal. You know, you can't hold on to this channel. You can't hold on to this podcast. You can't hold on to this dream. And I feel like through switching my focus so many times, I realized I was just focusing on the wrong thing. Or actually, no. I feel like I kept switching my focus because I was focusing on the right thing, but at the wrong pace. There's a different way I'm trying to word this, actually. What am I trying to say? I had it at the tip of my tongue. I'm just gonna let it go. I'm not gonna dwell on it. I decided that maybe I'm trying so hard to focus on these outward things when really I need to focus on myself. And this led me to becoming more secure within myself in order to focus on these goals. I needed to become more secure through self-awareness about my own process. I started to write more because I wanted to discover more about myself. I wanted to become more self-aware about what really drew me to this path in the first place. And I feel like I know. And I know that the times that I picked up a podcast, I picked up a YouTube channel, I picked up blog writing, I just didn't know myself enough to continue on with that journey. I had to get real with how I operate and how my process is. And I learned that I'm a writer first. That is how I connect with my intuition. That is how I connect with all the things that make me who I am, and how I reconnect with the things that made me who I am. When I was toying with the idea of starting a podcast again, it was hitting me hard. Like, you ever like find yourself trying to put something off, but it just keeps coming back to you like 10 times harder? The more I ran away from starting a podcast, the more it chased me down. It was like, this is something that you need to do, right? I think it resurfaced in my life last year, and it hit me really hard because I realized I was either going to go down a path where I was going to be trying so hard to put my story out in these short ways, like trying to obsess over, you know, TikTok, or trying to obsess over, you know, Reels, and like just these very short forms of communication, when the only thing that was going through my head was, there is a way for you to share your whole story instead of putting it out in these bite-sized pieces only. Like, yes, you can still put out those bite-sized pieces, but your story is so much bigger than a 30-second to 1-minute video. And there's more that you can share with the world. And so I was really insecure about starting another podcast because, you know, in the back of my mind, I was like, people are going to be thinking like, oh, here she go again. Like, she's going to pick this up and she's going to drop it next year. Or like, even with myself, I was like telling myself those things. And so I really viewed my podcast journey as being something that I abandoned. Using the word abandoned in my creative journey, you know, in my life, is just, it puts a really negative connotation on pausing something. And about a couple months ago, I realized, I was like, I have never abandoned my podcast. I have never, because I was looking at this whole podcast thing as being like my third podcast. And so I really viewed them as these separate journeys where I was just like picking up and stopping, picking up and stopping. I have never abandoned my podcast. I allowed it to evolve. I rather view my goals, my dreams, with the idea of evolution, Because you can pick up something and then you can put it down and allow yourself to grow and allow the idea to grow. Because I know for a fact that when I first started the podcast, there were things that I did not know about myself. I'm not gonna cry. There were things that I didn't know about myself, and I didn't know about my process. So it couldn't reach its full potential. These different times that I've picked up this podcast and I allowed myself to put it down, that wasn't me lacking commitment. I realized that was me allowing myself to evolve and allowing my goals to evolve. I allowed myself this space to return with more awareness. It is at a much better space to thrive in my life. I'm at a much better space to thrive in my life. You see, it's like this podcast is a reflection of me. I allowed myself to evolve. I allowed the podcast to evolve. And now we're back. And now we're here to share the story in a way that past me couldn't, but in a way that present me can to the fullest. Again, she's rhyming. And that's the story of why I'm here today hosting Intro to Insight. My whole goal is to share lessons that I've learned in my life that led to fulfillment and opportunity. And now I would like to introduce that season 1 is all about the core of cultivation. And this season is all about me revealing the core moments in my life that guided me to awareness. So these stories are coming from, my childhood, my youth, my early teenage years. There are so many things in my life that I would say are the core moments, because without those stories, without those moments in my life, I would not be walking the path that I am today. And as you listen to these next episodes, I hope that it inspires you to also think about your own core moments in your life. We all have core themes that happen, in our childhood, in our teenage years, early adulthood, that kickstarted our self-awareness, that kickstarted our confidence. I hope we find community in this podcast. I hope we find ourselves more. I hope we become more self-aware, because I also, in return, I want to hear about what makes you who you are. And I'm super excited about the space I'm in right now, because I have recorded or tried to record this episode before, and it just wasn't at a place for me to record it yet. I was anxious, I was nervous, but also I was just very excited. And I feel like now I am very calm, because now it's the right time to do something. It's the right time to put my foot out there. And I'm sitting here silent, sometimes taking a moment of silence, because I can feel how excited my inner child is about getting these stories out, because there are some stories in my life that I don't share often, and people wouldn't know, people wouldn't know things about you unless you share them. And this is my time, this is my inner child's time to just explore how it feels to be in front of a camera and sharing stories that I'm proud of. Share the stories that made me who I am. Because if it wasn't for younger me being super confident and just deciding that we're going to become more confident and that we're going to go for things, the core of cultivation, revealing the core moments in my life that guided me to awareness and fulfillment. That I have also decided to connect my self-portraits and my creative journey as a digital artist with my podcast episodes. So my goal is to create a self-portrait. I'm thinking about just starting it for each season, where I create a self-portrait that is dedicated to what the season will be all about. So I'm excited to share that. Hopefully that's going to be out by the time this podcast episode is out. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed my story, whether it is through my digital art or through this podcast or through all of the other many ways that I share my story.